So last night I decided to go and see the 1975 classic that is Jaws by Steven Spielberg. A cracker of a film, but somehow that big killer great white shark wasn't the most terrifying thing that I had to endure last night. No, there was something far more mortifying than that. And it was this. It was this Celtic Football Club statement which dropped at 8:42 PM on a Saturday night and acts as the so-called response to Celtic supporters after weeks of discontent, after weeks of asking for answers. This is the response, and I use that word response very loosely because through all of these words, approximately 1,000 of them, through all of these paragraphs and through all these excuses, there's no response here. We are right back where we were at 8:41 PM last night, mere moments before this statement was released. There is no accountability. There is no answers. It is just the board once again deflecting all the blame to everywhere else and effectively calling us fans stupid. This statement is all the evidence we needed to show how much this board hates us. I feel like I'm wasting my breath. What is there that I can say here that I haven't already said in this video, or that video, or that video, or the podcast this week? You know what I mean? I've said everything that I can say. None of this statement comes as a surprise to me. It doesn't add any further narrative to the one that I've been painting on this channel the past week about how much the board hate us, how much they are ruining the Celtic Football Club, and how they're the very rot of the club. Nothing is new from this statement last night, but all it is the further proof that you need to back up all these narratives and arguments, and all it is the ammunition that they didn't need to give Celtic supporters to further continue their quest to chase these charlatans out of our club. Because that's exactly how I feel after reading this mumbo-jumbo that they released last night, this so-called statement which answers the poor transfer window, which answers our exit from the Champions League, which answers the managerial situation. What a horrible 24 hours for Celtic fans. On top of that story that was leaked to The Sun yesterday, we are a mess. We have people up and down the country laughing at us. We have people laughing at us across Europe. And this statement just adds to that laughter, just adds to that humiliation. The Celtic board have made a royal tit of themselves. It's as simple as that. And this statement continues to do so. You know that I would usually read through things verbatim. I would usually give you the full picture of everything that's been said, but this is 1,000 words of utter nonsense. And if I sat here reading it all, number one, I'd send you to sleep, and number two, we wouldn't achieve anything. We wouldn't understand anything that we're meant to understand. I'm sure we've all read it by now. If we've not read it, I'm sure we've already heard the analysis of it from some other podcaster or media outlet. It's very straightforward. The Celtic board have refused to take any accountability for what's went wrong at the club this summer, and at any point of the statement, we have nobody putting their name on it. You know, this is once again whatever members of the board hiding behind a piece of writing, like they hid behind that article that was in The Sun yesterday. Nobody willing to take that step forward to hold themselves to account for the wrongdoings at the club, and it's just an anonymous piece of shite. Pardon my French, I'm probably going to use quite a bit of it in this video. It's just utter shite. And I'm fed up with being fed utter shite from the Celtic board. I want to know what's going wrong. This is a statement where the board treat us like idiots. They patronise us and they talk us into thinking that everything that's going wrong is because of our misunderstanding. Not because of their poor work or inability to act as an elite football club. They try to gaslight us into thinking that it's our misunderstanding of the media, that it's our misunderstanding of UEFA laws and legislations that has led Celtic into the position they are. There's no explanation as to why the squad has clearly regressed. There's no explanation as to why the manager's in the situation he is. There's no explanation as to why we didn't invest more than £3 million heading into a very important Champions League qualifier. It's gaslighting the supporters into thinking we are the ones that have caused this. And they might not explicitly say, this is your fault, but if you read it and you read between the lines, it's effectively what the board are doing. They're treating us like subhuman shite. They're treating us like we don't deserve to be in the know about our own football club. And once again, they're taking this moral high ground and position of superiority, which they have a number of times over the past 20 years. Most evident in the COVID season, when we heard about this sense of entitlement that the support had. That we had this sheer disdain that Peter Lawwell looked to us from when he refused to make changes at the football club. This is, for me, significantly worse than what happened back then. Because right now, at least Celtic are in a position of, or should be in a position of strength, to talk about things very openly and very honestly. But instead of using that position of strength to talk about things that went wrong and how they won't happen again, they're hiding. And back then, at least there was a global pandemic going on. At least Celtic were in a bit of a limbo and we lost the league title. Right now, we're top of the league. We really don't have any excuses to be unhappy about where we are domestically, unlike 2020, 2021. So this is worse. This is far worse for me. Not one. They have not bothered to address those fan statements. They have not bothered to address the questions at hand amongst the Celtic support right now. Further, proving the point that they just don't care about us. They live in their own bubble, their own conservative bubble. You know, the Tory board, as we all know, they don't care what we want. They don't care about what we want to know. They care about themselves. And this statement proves that to an alarming extent, actually. Because if they had any ounce of respect or concern for the supporters that pile money into the club, surely that statement would be addressed. At the very least, I'm not sitting here expecting them to put answers out to all 7 or 8 points that were raised and all 7 or 8 questions in one statement. But what I am expecting is at least an acknowledgement of that. But no, all we get is the club takes Celtic supporters' views extremely seriously and we understand the concerns and frustrations which have arisen. I don't think you do. I don't think you do care about the views, and I don't think you take them extremely seriously because there is no proof to support that claim. Mr. Nicholson, Mr. Lawwell, Mr. Desmond, Mr. Mackay. There is no point in this statement that makes me think that you take our views seriously. Because as we're going to look at in a minute, all you do is blame other people for your shortcomings. All you do is point to other organisations and other people as the place we should look for our answers, rather than you, who have the keys to our very football club. So, where are we meant to turn here? So as we all know, Celtic spent nowhere near enough money this window for our liking, or anybody's liking really. We clearly haven't improved to the level we should, especially with the money that we make as a football club, and the money that we made this summer, you know, in particular. Even Nicholas Kuhn himself left the club for a fee of £16 million. It could rise to be more than that. Last summer we sold Matt O'Reilly for a Scottish transfer fee record of £30 million. Jeremy Frimpong generated more money for the club on top of his £10 million fee that he left for, or £12 million fee that he left for a few years ago. There's money flowing into the club. Yet, however, the club's model is not optional. It's now essential because of UEFA sustainability regulations that we must comply. Wages and transfer spending are strictly governed by UEFA's regulations, which effectively cap wages and transfer spending as a proportion of our revenues. Importantly, the club's cash reserves are not relevant to the assessment of this de facto spending cap for the purpose of UEFA regulations. So apparently, it's UEFA's sustainability regulations that are at fault. Even though Celtic, very recently by the way, were named as one of the most sustainable clubs in all of Europe because of the cash flow entering the club and because of the spending up that's compared against that. Now, I would like to give a huge shout out to John McGinley for pointing this out, by the way, because he pointed this out on social media last night. And John is a fantastic writer, fantastic person, inside the Celtic fan media scope. And he pointed this out last night. Celtic citing UEFA rules are apparently a reason for the transfer window. However, one of these big accounts that follows football financial things and all the kind of financial aspects of football covered in 2024 that this was very far away from being a problem for Celtic. And that was wrote not just, about a year ago, not too long ago. 43% was the ratio for Celtic's costs against total revenue, which is well below the 70% target. And unless the Celtic board have been out spending money behind our back on God knows what, I can't understand where that 70% would be reached, because Celtic have made more money than they've lost since this article was wrote about a year ago. So how on earth could it be UEFA's sustainability regulations and PSR and all the rest of it that is stopping Celtic from acting accordingly in a transfer window when we are actively making money by the month, by the transfer window, and then not reinvesting? It just makes no sense, and is an example of the Celtic board refusing to accept any accountability and hiding behind any excuse that comes their way. And not only that, the other excuse they hide behind is social media. And they blame that social media and the mainstream media as well, I should say, is the reason that we as Celtic fans find ourselves unhappy with the transfer window. Here were the exact words of the Celtic board. Transfer activity attracts enormous attention and speculation, particularly across social media, and the mainstream media has commoditised the transfer window in its relentless search for content. In connection with Celtic, we recognise that debate around this subject reflects the passion of our supporters. Unfortunately, as it's often the case in the media and social media, there is an inaccurate or misleading information in circulation. Sorry, what? We have members of football clubs' boards across Europe. We have ex-players and current players publicly shaming you for how we operate. This isn't social media that's to blame. This isn't the mainstream media to blame. And trust me, we've all got our problems with the mainstream media, including myself. It ain't flawless. I have a lot of problems with the MSM. But to hide behind them and use them as the boogeyman in this situation is cowardly and pathetic, when we have first-hand information confirming that you can't operate like a serious football club. We have the chairman or the CEO or whatever it was of Go Ahead Eagles coming out and publicly acknowledging that Celtic are a nightmare to do business with. And they aren't the first or last to do so. We have former players like Benjamin Siegrist coming out on a public stage and shaming the way that Celtic conduct their business. So how dare you use the social media platforms and the MSM as an excuse, trying to make us feel stupid when we can read and when we can listen and when we can see everything coming from all these places? How thick do you think we are? How stupid do you think we are? And it all comes back to that PSR nonsense as well. They say that we can't spend this or that. This is the same Celtic board that refused to pay £5 million for a winger from Go Ahead Eagles, then say, oh, PSR or spending or UEFA rules make it impossible, and then go and spend £5 million on another winger on deadline day. So make it make sense. None of it makes sense. And I know that you're using the passion of the supporter as an excuse here as well, but that's because we care about the club when you fucking don't. The rest of the statement is just a sore head to read. The fact that the club plans our recruitment and player trading strategy responsibly and consistently. No, it doesn't. Stop fucking pandering to us. Stop fucking lying to us. You do not plan consistently and responsibly. I'll get the tier lists out. Ryan118, king of the tier lists. I'll fucking get them. I'll show you the responsible transfer strategy of the last decade. There's a lot more duds than there is success. And you can point to your 30 million exports and 20 million exports all you like, but it doesn't outweigh the amount of shite that you've brought into this club on a consistent basis. That's the only consistency that exists there, by the way. There's no consistency about it. If there was consistency in our transfer windows and our player trading strategy, we would be pumping out successful transfer window after successful transfer window. And the fact is, Brendan Rodgers has now had 5 transfer windows at Celtic. How many of them have been successful? I'll let you answer the question. Since, you don't like giving answers yourself, so I probably don't need to give answers back. And I think the biggest gut punch of the statement, as I quickly dance through it, as I said, I'm not even going to waste my time or your time reading it all, because I suppose we all have by now as well. I think the biggest gut punch of it is this paragraph here. This is the one that really fucking angers me, and it really sends me over the edge. Therefore, all investment decisions must be and are guided by responsible forecasts of future revenues and cash flow, which by their nature are volatile. We can never compromise the financial integrity of the club. In short, throwing money at transfers and contracts is not a sustainable route to success, as many other clubs have found, to the detriment of their supporters. They couldn't fucking resist it, could they? They couldn't resist that one wee jab, like they do every fucking year at the AGM. Like they stand there quite proudly with their smucks on their faces and their bonuses in their pocket. They couldn't resist one fucking dig towards Rangers across the road, who bear no relevance to Celtic's situation right now, who bear no relevance to what the Celtic fans demand answers for. Rangers are another club, are another entity, and their financial heartbreak, their financial disaster happened 15 years ago almost. The people who were involved with that statement aren't at the club anymore. Nobody involved with Rangers in the past 15 years is involved with that club anymore. Yet they're still putting the sword into them. We don't care. We don't care. We'll have our laugh and our joke on Derby Day. But this is embarrassing. These so-called businessmen and qualified fucking arseholes are no better than the common Celtic supporter on the forums or in my comments section taking a dig at Rangers. Yet they're meant to be the professionals who are better than us, but they can't fucking resist it. All for what? To try and win over a few supporters by going, ha, they slagged Rangers. I don't care. I simply do not care. And that is the level they stoop to. It shows every ounce of professionalism they have, which is fucking none. And that's the gut punch for me. That right there is every reason why this mob should be fucking chased down London Road. So in summary, we got nothing. We got no answers, we got no conclusions, we got absolutely nothing. All we got was the board giving themselves one big massive pat on the back, which isn't even deserved. We got nonsense that was made to make us feel stupid, to make us feel small, and to make them ultimately feel better about the fucking shite job they've done. I'm sorry for my language, baby. I know a lot of people don't like it when I swear, but I cannot help it here. My professional credentials of being a journalist are in the pan this week. And I don't care, because I love this club. But this is just nonsense. It's actually quite sore to read. Because, you know, no matter how much you care or how much you try and do to push that mob of crooks for answers, you're going to get nothing. You're going to get nonsense that blames everybody else bar themselves. Blame social media. Blame journalists. Blame fans. Blame UEFA. Blame the rest of Scottish football. Blame the SFA. Blame everybody but yourselves. That's what you're going to get every single time. Ultimately, what this all comes back to, in my own opinion, is the Celtic board's utter refusal to modernise as an entity, as a football club, and in their own wee bubble that they've been so protected in this past 20 years. They haven't modernised to a point where they blatantly refuse to acknowledge that there is a huge section of knowledgeable supporters out there who are discussing these things on a day-to-day basis, who have their credible sources, who have people who research. They still treat supporters like it's a pre-social media age where they can only find out things about the club through very select people, rather than the great stage that there is now of fantastic podcasters, of fantastic journalists, of fantastic bloggers. And I'm not including myself in this, by the way. I can't help but reiterate this. I'm just a supporter who happens to have a degree in journalism. I'm just a supporter who cares about the club. I'm not in the know. I don't know about the bank balances. I'm not a financially equipped person. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a lawyer. I just love this club, and I will try and come across as knowledgeable as I possibly can, but I am not one of these many fantastic people that there is out there who are so reliable when it comes to actual intellectual discussion about the football club. And their refusal to accept that these people exist is what is now making them look more foolish than they ever have, because they will continue to hide behind their own glass wall where they're the smart ones and everyone else on the other side that they look through onto are daft and thick as mince and stupid as fuck. They will sit and pretend that that glass wall still exists when they don't realise that there are people behind them looking at them, laughing at them in the same way they laugh at others. That is what's happened now in this day and age, and the refusal to modernise and to comply with what a football club needs in 2025 is what's holding us back, it's what's holding them back, and it's ultimately going to be their downfall, if that downfall isn't already fully underway. Just to finish off, it's not very often I do this. It's not very often I bring up my own tweets and read them verbatim to you. I'm quite good at memorising my thoughts and being able to put them out there for you all to understand and listen to. Just to finish off, I don't do this very often, but I have one of my own tweets on screen. Usually I'm quite good at memorising my own thoughts and putting them forward to you in a way that is easy to digest and understand. And sometimes I rant more than I plan. But this kind of summarises all of my thoughts after reading that statement last night. This is effectively how I feel. And I can't put it any better than how I tweeted it last night. I am scunnered. Scunnered with Celtic at the minute. I really am. These past couple of weeks have been truly frustrating and testing. Not so much to do with the performances. I know they'll get better. But just to do with the actual football club themselves. And I'm repeating myself into saying the same things that I and everybody else has said 1,000 times. You know, I don't need to repeat these points. In fact, I feel like that I'm dangerously coming close to doing what the Celtic board do and treating people like idiots, as if I'm just spoon-feeding the same thing time and time again for views. No, that isn't the case. I just want to make that clear. But I do feel like that is what's happening sometimes when I do repeat myself. But it's simple. They hate us. And furthermore, I would say they detest us. It's not just hate at this point. They detest us. And if they detest us, they deserve to be treated with the same level of detest right back. And I've always been one to make sure that things are done in a dignified manner. And I've always been one that's keen to ensure that I'm not trying my best to sound like I'm inciting some sort of riot at Celtic Park. Of course that's not what I'm doing. But they need chased out our club. The voices of Celtic supporters need to be loud. And they need to be loud week in, week out. Whether that's in the stadium, outside the main stand before or after games. We need to chase them out, our club. And it's as simple as that. They do not deserve to be there. And if they detest us, I certainly detest them. And, you know, for guys that, and this is what I was saying in my tweet, for guys that like to remind us of how qualified they are to run our club, they haven't half made a complete arse of themselves all summer through this statement, through the embarrassing stories from other members of clubs abroad, through former players, through the failed transfers on deadline day, through all these different things. They haven't half made an arse of themselves, and they've showed themselves up for what they truly are, incompetent and certainly replaceable members of the board. They are replaceable. I think there's plenty of other accountants and lawyers out there who could run the club better. And they're no better than any of us, and they should be reminded of that. They are no better than any of us who pile our thousands into the club every year. So, some people spending more than 2,000 quid a year, 3,000 quid a year to follow Celtic all over Scotland and Europe. They are no better than those supporters. They are no better than the very heartbeat of what Celtic Football Club is, and they should be reminded of that. They have a cheek to go on about how better they are than the rest of us when they just sit and make digs at Rangers in their statements and at their AGMs like your Dawid on the Kerrydale forums. If they were professional, if they were top class, if they were the guys that were fit to run this club, they wouldn't be doing that. They would be ignoring Rangers, and they would be doing their job right, but they can't do either of those things because they aren't fit for purpose. It's mortifying. Absolutely mortifying. And enough is enough. I've said it 1,000,000 times this week, but enough is enough. And I know that I've just read my own tweet word for word there, basically, but I genuinely can't sum it up any better than that. In fact, I can. To finish off, here's a clip from Only an Excuse, more than 20 years ago, which still stands true to this day and sums up everything about the charlatans that run this club.
The statement reads as follows. Go away. Mind your own business. Ye's a break. It's no our fault. We're just custodians. Ye's money. Thank you.